Bruce DuMont continues on Beyond the Beltway. Thank you very much for joining us this evening. And also, we're very pleased to welcome a brand new affiliate that's tuned in this evening. KFOW AM, that's in Wakaska, Minnesota. And that's called News Talk 1170. It's part of the Linder Network. It's owned by Lynn Kettleson, and it covers all of Minnesota. And hopefully this will be the first of many new affiliates from the great state of Minnesota. And again, we should mention for those listening on KFOW for the first time, as you know, you are one of the targeted states. The president thinks that he's going to put Minnesota in his bag of tricks on election night. I'd be very interested in getting your assessment of what you think is going to happen in Minnesota. So you can send me a Twitter tweet at Dumo, at D-U-M-O, and tell me that you're from Minnesota listening for the first time, and give me your assessment as to who you think will win the great state of Minnesota. Joining us in this hour, joining Anthony Anderson, who joins me in studio, we welcome two old friends of this program, Josh Cantrow, who is a pro-Trump attorney, and Raymond Lopez, who's the alderman of the 15th Ward. He is also the Democratic committeeman of that ward. And Ray, I want to begin with you. You're a Hispanic leader in the city of Chicago, which is about one of the bluest cities in the country. Because you're a ward committeeman in a city that is so blue, does the Biden campaign, do they reach out to you at all, or they just assume that because you're a Democrat and you're Hispanic, your ward, the 15th Ward, is going to just, all the votes are going to flow towards Joe Biden?
Good evening, Bruce. I think, yes, that the assumption by many Democratic candidates, particularly the Biden campaign, is that the water is going to flow their direction. So very little effort and resources is used in states or cities like ours, and focusing on, as you said, states like Minnesota, Florida, and some of those other states that they view to be more swing states at the moment.
What about Republicans? Have you seen any inroads or attempts to sway some Hispanic voters, or do they think that's maybe wasted dollars?
No, oddly enough, I actually have seen a number of Republican candidates trying to work, thinking that they're going to build on what they believe will be a red wave from President Trump in this election. And that's a very interesting dynamic to see play out. How much of that will actually benefit them has yet to be seen, because you have to do more than just ride coattails to win elections in the city of Chicago.
And also, over the last couple of weeks, one of the stories that people have been watching is the Hispanic male vote appears to be going towards Donald Trump in a larger way than 4 years ago. Not that he's going to win that vote, but again, it's brought up the issue of where Hispanic voters go. And again, the 15th Ward has Mexicans, it has Puerto Ricans, it has Central Americans, it has African Americans. As you look at how that race is swirling around in your ward, do you see some defection towards Donald Trump by some of your residents?
You know, Bruce, yes, I do see some of my Latino residents and even my African American residents claiming that they're going to vote for the president's reelection. And I find that interesting on a number of levels. But, you know, when you see particularly among Latino voters, particularly descendants of immigrants or immigrants turned citizens, you know, when you see some of the work that's been done by President Trump over the past 4 years, separating families, caging children, and things of that nature, to see children of immigrants or immigrants themselves who have now become citizens saying they're going to vote for a man who does those kind of policies, you know, it really speaks volumes to that kind of message that we are not monolithic voters, that we are, that there are certain things that people gravitate to, and the things that they're willing to overlook as they choose who they want to be their next president. And I think that is something that all campaigns should remember, that you can't just assume, you know, the black vote is one giant block and will always stick together, or Latinos are just one giant block and always will stick together. It has to be more nuanced, and the messaging has to be there. Otherwise, the fractures will continue.
Josh Cantrow also joins us. Josh, a frequent guest in this program. Nice to have you back with us, Josh. And as a Facebook friend, and you have many, you have been telling a story this past week of how you have, to some degree, socially suffered because of your strong support for Donald Trump. and I'm wondering if you might share some of those concerns that you have, because it's affected your personal life.
Yes, it has, Bruce. Thanks for having me on again. And Alderman Lopez, great to be on with you as well. I have been on this show throughout Donald Trump's presidency. I've shared some of these stories where people who I know, friends, distant relatives, etc., have a real problem with my supporting Donald Trump. But as the election has gotten closer, and the rhetoric has heated up and people are paying attention. Something happened this past week where I got a call from a friend who has headed up a social group that I'm part of. We get together about every 2 months, and basically said that I need to just stop it with the pro-Trump stuff, not only on my Facebook blog, but in my writings with American Thinker and the Chicago Tribune, and particularly on this show. And that if I didn't get off, then I was not welcome to be part of this group anymore. And so that was the first time that I've actually been canceled, so to speak. It's happened to a lot of people. That's my own personal experience.
Anthony Anderson joins us in studio, and he is African-American and a Republican, and a very supportive Republican for a long time. For people that may recall his frequent guests on this program over the last, let's say, 10 years. Anthony, to what extent being black and being a Republican, how does that affect you on a daily basis, if at all?
It has just a little effect on me for the most part, because I've been talking to my Democrat friends for the longest, and I've been trying to tell them for the longest, hey, listen, I'm not telling you to vote Republican. I'm not here to beat that drum. But what I am telling you is this. If you're going to vote for a specific candidate, if you're going to vote for a specific policy, or if you're going to vote for a specific party, all I'm saying is, as a constituent, you should expect your elected official to do the things that they say they're going to do. And if they don't, then vote them out of office. And that's the standpoint I come with. It's all about policy. And it's all about, getting your vote. And it's all about, hey, listen, getting something for your vote. Not only just voting that person in, but getting something for your vote. And that's for any constituent, whether you're in Kankakee, whether you're in Rock Island, whether you're in Southern Illinois. I don't care where you're at in this country. Every constituent should expect their elected official to do something for their communities. And by that, I mean, hey, listen, get the community in order, bring resources to the community. And I've always said this, Bruce, I can understand why, Wilmette, Winnetka, Glencoe, Kenilworth, I can understand why those
suburbs of Chicago.
Suburbs of Chicago. Those are some of the most affluent suburbs in the state of Illinois. And I can understand how Naperville, Downers Grove, Lisle, and a few other those suburbs have Biden-Harris signs out in front of the doors. But I'm still trying to figure out, why is it that if you're living on the south side and the west side of Chicago, why do you have a Biden-Harris campaign sticker in front of your door when those are the same people that they're supporting over here in these other communities? Because they're getting something for their money. There's a bang for their buck, but you're not.
Okay, when we come back, I want to hear from Ray Lopez on a couple of things. And most importantly, what impact, if all, will Joe Biden have on life in Chicago? Back shortly. Bruce DuMont back in Chicago. Thanks very much for joining us. Ray Lopez, one thing that Vice Presidential candidate Kamala Harris has said, she has said that she would like to abolish ICE. ICE is a very controversial agency within your community. Would you like to see ICE eliminated, and how likely do you think that will be?
I personally don't want to see the complete and total abolition of ICE. We have immigration laws in this country. What I do think we need to focus on is making that path to citizenship a lot easier, so that you don't have to wait 5, 6, 8 years to get your paperwork processed. And I think that oftentimes that phrase, abolish ICE, is a very catchy hashtag that politicians like to throw out there just to gain support and to gain attention. And usually it's to take away from the fact that they have done nothing to address the horrible immigration laws of the United States.
Mm-hmm. Would you expect that would be high on Joe Biden's agenda? trying to deal not only with the dreamers, but to come up with a with legislation that would give them a path to citizenship.
Well, as you know, and maybe your viewers may also be aware, we've had some great advocates from the City of Chicago's congressional delegation advocating for decades that we need to come up with better solutions to address immigration, in particular illegal immigration in this country. Unfortunately, the Latino community in particular, to Anthony's point earlier, is that they need to get some bang for their buck. They need to get something for their vote, and they're tired of talk. They want to see action. So I don't know how much that's going to really resonate after decades of Democrats saying, especially when they were in power, that they were going to tackle this issue and doing nothing about it.
Josh, a question to you, because each of our guests has sort of talked about a constituency that they represent or they have some great knowledge of. When you have been a guest on this program, you frequently identified yourself as a Jewish American, very pro-Trump, very pro-Israel. So for those Jews who are listening to the program this evening, some of whom, maybe a large number of them, still support the Democratic Party, what is it about this president and the things he has done in the past 3.5 years that make you believe that he is the best friend that Israel ever had?
Well, I do agree he's been the best friend Israel's ever had, but he's also been, frankly, one of the best presidents that we've had, at least in my lifetime. What he's done for this country economically and for various marginalized groups, unemployment and wages and the like. But from a pro-Israel standpoint, the case is just the easiest to make ever. I mean, he has moved the embassy from Tel Aviv to Jerusalem, recognized Jerusalem as Israel's capital, got out of the catastrophic Iran deal, and has put a lot of pressure on Iran, and has forged peace agreements between Israel and 3 Arab states, which is one more than Israel had in its previous 71 years of existence. So that's Bahrain, United Arab Emirates, and as of 2 days ago, Sudan. I mean, it has just been incredible.
Would you acknowledge, because some people say the president has not had an opportunity to talk about his foreign policy. It was not an issue in the recent debate or debates. And I guess some people would say that, foreign policy at this moment in time with COVID and everything else and riots in our streets, foreign policy isn't a sexy issue like it has been in the past. And that's why nobody's talking about it. And the president doesn't get a chance to go out there and take some bows for what he's done, which maybe even semi-critics would give him some acknowledgement for.
Yeah, I think it's a shame that foreign policy isn't discussed more. Look, you can go back to the Bush-Gore debates. It was hardly discussed. And then the Bush presidency was all about foreign policy. And you can agree or disagree on the moves that were made there. But we ended up electing a president for foreign policy. It was hardly discussed. I wish Americans would pay more attention to foreign policy, but it's easy to see in this unique environment of COVID and the economic devastation that followed it, why it's not on people's minds more. I can tell you in the Jewish community, yes, there are a lot of pro-Jewish Trump supporters, a lot more than people think. There's social pressure, and there's concerns about coming out as a Trump supporter from a social and a professional standpoint. But I strongly believe that President Trump will get the greatest percentage of the Jewish vote since Ronald Reagan. And that's going to make a difference in states like Florida and Arizona and Ohio and in Michigan.
Okay. And you say the same thing about African Americans.
Absolutely. And to a point about Trump and this whole thing about war, I think it should be noted that this president should be given some credit for not getting America into all these endless wars. That coming from a Gulf War veteran. You turn around every other day or every other year that we didn't have Donald Trump. This country was facing a foreign enemy at every stop. It seemed as though we could be, tricked into a war almost randomly. And so Trump has said, enough of the endless warmongering. This country is not about that anymore. And so I think he should be given more credit for that, in addition to all the achievements that he's made with Israel and all the other foreign governments.
How do you feel about that, Ray, on the issue of wars and how the Democrats and Republicans for the last 20 years have been knee-deep in wars, and the president appears to want to be out of them?
Well, I think I can safely agree with everybody that nobody likes seeing our men and women going out of the country to go fight in foreign lands and dying on foreign soil. So if we can get a reprieve from that, I think as Americans, we should all be very thankful for that. Mm-hmm. And to both of our fellow panelists' point, I'm actually very sad that we don't talk more about foreign policy, that our residents are not engaged throughout the United States about the impact that foreign policy has on everything that we do domestically as well. All of those international relationships have an impact back home when the president is here. And the fact that we don't talk about that, we don't educate our citizenry about that, and we don't have a truly global understanding of what our role is or what we want our role to be is a civics lesson that is missed on a national scale.
Insofar as just the awareness of the voters, one of the issues that the country is facing, obviously, is COVID. Illinois and Chicago has spiked recently, and a lot of that increase has been in the Hispanic communities, Ray. To what extent is the COVID spike in Chicago, to what extent does that go back to your ward, and what's being done insofar as awareness is concerned to fight it? How are the hospitals? I mean, how is it impacting the people that you personally represent?
Since this shutdown started in Chicago March 18th, I personally know of almost 50 people who have died from COVID. The communities that I represent are very much like Latino communities and African American communities throughout the United States, where we represent those essential workers who are still working, who don't have the luxury of being able to work from home or stay from home or shelter in place like we've seen for some other demographics. And as we see this rise continue now, where in certain zip codes of mine, we're seeing a 73% increase in COVID positivity rates, the fact that we're not truly responding and that we didn't learn and take this opportunity to teach our constituents how to live with this virus swirling around us, how to take the necessary precautions to keep themselves safe, I think is a failure of the governments that represent them. It is something that I have been battling with our mayor to try to address, and I don't think that our mayor or our governor, or even in many other places, governors throughout the nation have truly taken this as something that we have to learn to live with so that we can start opening up our economy once again.
What could they be doing? Again, for those around the country, obviously Chicago has a Democratic mayor, Lori Lightfoot. We have a Democratic governor, J.B. Pritzker. And again, for those listening around the country, in the early days of COVID, they had daily press conferences. I mean, literally, they go on for months. We had daily press conferences. And again, there was both the mayor and the governor decided they thought there would be wisdom in getting into a pissing match with the President of the United States, which doesn't seem to be a good idea, but they did that. What lessons could and should they have been communicating, Ray?
Well, I think all the lessons that we needed to learn, Chicago locally as well as nationally, is how are we able to, one, continue with life while still taking safety precautions? Do we need to have better education with regards to masks, with regards to how to open up your businesses, how to run life without just having to shelter in place and shut everything down every 2 or 3 months because of a spike? Other nations have learned how to deal with pandemics and viruses and things of that nature without destroying their economies, without shutting down their societies. And we have never learned that, and we still haven't learned that. And if we have to continue with that kind of up and down, irrational, reactionary policy, we're never going to be able to get beyond COVID. And I think the other problem is that, yes,
that appears to be the that appears to be the Biden plan, though, right? Point. The Biden plan is, we've got to shut things down again.
Well, as you know, Bruce, on your show several months ago, I said that the president should have shut things down completely.
Yes, you did.
Close the borders, and I think even your eyebrows were raised when I said that.
Yep.
But I think that's what we should have done. We should have been able to contain this in the very beginning by shutting down our country, shutting down everything to allow the virus to run its course so that we can then open again and then be able to start picking up the pieces. But we never did that. And now many individuals, particularly some of my Democratic mayors and colleagues throughout this country, are just planning for bailouts after November's election, assuming Trump loses, to try and get themselves back on track. We need more than bailouts. We need policies that show our residents, show our cities, show our leadership on how we're able to move forward and address these issues so that we're not in this roller coaster of pandemic policy.
We got to pause. I'm Bruce DuMont, back shortly. Bruce DuMont back. Thanks very much for joining us tonight. 1-800-723-8289 is the phone number. We'll go to a call in just a moment, but I want each of our guests on the line to tell us a little bit about who they are, and we begin with Josh Cantrell. Give us 20 seconds, Josh.
So in my day life, I am a cybersecurity and privacy and technology attorney, represent many small, mid-sized, and large companies. And I'm a political junkie. I've got an active Facebook blog with several 100,000 followers, and frequently appear on this show and write in American Thinker and other publications.
And also, we should mention that because he's a regular on this program, his essays, his blogs frequently show up also on Beyond the Beltway fan page. If you are not yet a member of the Beyond the Beltway fan page, just send a note, say you want to be a friend there. We'll add you. And anyone who's a guest on this program, if they want to have things to say, we let them offer their assessments at that particular point to our audience. And Ray Lopez, you've become somewhat of a fixture around here this year. So tell us a little bit about who you are for those that may not know.
Again, Bruce, Alderman Raymond Lopez. I'm a member of Chicago City Council, 15th Ward. It's like our district, representing some of the historic neighborhoods of Back of the Yards, Brighton Park, Gage Park, West Englewood. I've been elected 5 different times, either as alderman or as a Democratic committeeman, which is like the ward boss, if you will, representing all kinds of ethnic demographics on the southwest side of the city of Chicago.
And you are the most outspoken, or one of the most outspoken critics of Mayor Lori Lightfoot. You don't think she's doing a great job?
I just like keeping it honest. I think democracy and government work better when you tell the truth, and sometimes people don't like hearing the truth, even when it's in your own party. But too bad.
Anthony Anderson, give us 15 seconds on who you are for those that missed the first hour.
Yes, I am a U.S. Marine Corps veteran, Operation Desert Storm, Desert Shield. I was employed with the Illinois Department of Corrections / Juvenile Justice for 27 plus years, and I'm a Republican, proud Republican for the past 30 years plus.
One of the issues, Ray, that came up the other week is the issue of whether or not children who are in cages because of the Trump administration or because of the Biden-Obama administration. And the other issue, this was a story brought up by the ACLU, which received quite a bit of coverage, and that is there's allegedly 585 children that have yet to be returned to their parents. Is that a real story in your opinion, or is there a second side to it that we might not know?
Well, I think it's absolutely a real story. I think we have seen and witnessed the families that are separated. We've seen and heard of the stories where women were forced into having vasectomies and things of that nature before being sent back. You know, this is something that is real, the separation of families. But once again, it goes back to what I said earlier about the horrible immigration laws and policies of this country, where we have not been able to address how you can come here legally, how you can come here and have a pathway to citizenship without breaking the law. And I don't think that Trump deserves 100% of the blame for those policies. We cannot forget that President Obama was the deporter in chief when he was around, deporting the most amount of individuals. I think 2.5 million people were kicked out of this country under Obama's watch, as opposed to, I don't even know, I think less than 2 million under President Trump's watch. So I think we have to keep that in mind, that if you want to address the issue when it comes to immigration, if you want these headlines to change and not have them come up again, you need to come up with sound, reasonable, actionable policies at the national level that,
Now, Joe,
quite frankly, neither party has come up with.
Now, Joe Biden said the other night, he said, well, that was, I was the vice president there. Now, if I'm the president, I can make some of these changes and provide access or a path to citizenship.
Bruce, if I could just say,
yes, I do.
To me, that is pandering.
Go ahead.
That is just pure pandering. There's a lot of things, and I appreciate the fact that Alderman Lopez comes on here and he's honest and he criticizes his own party, because he's right. Obama was the deporter in chief, and in some respects, both Obama and Trump are the cleanup crew on a problem that has existed for way too long. The failure of both parties to come together with bipartisan immigration legislation to fix the problem. Obama did it one way, Trump's doing it another way. But I don't think that you can blame either man totally. I mean, they are trying to deal with a problem, and this problem has existed for a long, long time. And ultimately, it's got to be Congress passing legislation, because right now you have all these court rulings that are all over the place.
But if you have, Josh, if you have a Joe Biden as president and you have a Democrat U.S. Senate, which is entirely possible, it would seem to me that whether you're a dreamer or whether you want a pathway to citizenship, it's going to happen. I mean, the political banners, I mean, they've been blocked.
Bruce, I don't think so, because we've already seen that. We've already seen that playbook. We've seen that when the Democrats were in control of Congress and they had a Democratic president under President Obama. And the only thing that we got out of it was Obamacare. Immigration was left off the table. As my former mayor famously said, that is, you don't touch, it's a third rail issue. Rahm Emanuel, as chief of staff, said, don't touch it. It's third rail, focus on health care.
Don't you think that Joe Biden raised the stakes a little bit the other night, though, Ray? When he said, I'm going to be the president now, and is he going to be able to wiggle off the hook again?
I don't think so, because to be perfectly honest, if you're going to play the role that it was me and Obama doing everything, and then when you get called on the carpet for something that didn't go right, all of a sudden, well, no, I was just second fiddle. You don't get to have it both ways. You have to choose.
That is so well stated, what Alderman Lopez. I agree with every word he said. The Democrats had complete control. In fact, they had a supermajority in the Senate for his first 2 years of the Obama-Biden administration. They did nothing. Bruce, I was in Arizona last week, 5 days on business.
I know.
And I met with a lot of people there, and I talked with a lot of people in the Latino community and other communities. It is incredible to me how many people in the Latino community there want our immigration laws enforced and that they are behind Trump. It was also striking to me how many white, moderate independents, the suburban mom types, are totally with Biden. So I think that this whole ethnic coalitions are going to be really interesting to see what the exit polls show after the election. I think Trump's going to do better with the Latino vote than a lot of people think.
Let's go to Dave in Spokane, Washington. Go ahead, Dave. You're on the air.
Hey, just a couple quick things. I've been consistently frustrated that the administration, the current one with Trump, has not gotten near the credit that they should have for all the Mideast deals that have gone on in the last few weeks or few months. I mean, we're talking deals that people have wanted for decades and decades and decades, and all of a sudden these deals get done, and not a whiff of it on any of the mainstream media stations. And I think this president, I'm 50 years old, and in my lifetime, he's done the most for the black community that I've seen of anybody. And then the other thing I wanted to mention is on tax rates. They keep wanting to talk like, oh, the tax cuts were only for the rich. And it's because they skew the numbers and they talk about who got the most dollar-wise. But if you just do basic math on the percentages, the lowest tax bracket, like 15% tax bracket, went to 12. That's a 20% reduction in your tax bracket. The highest tax bracket only went from 39.6 to 37. That's 6.5% compared to 20. The lowest tax brackets got the biggest breaks, and I'm sick of them skewing the numbers just because the most dollars went to the high end. That's because they make more. That's why there's higher dollars there. You got to look at the percentages to make it apples to apples.
Josh, your comment.
Well, I mean, you nailed it. The caller nailed it on the foreign policy in the Middle East. It is incredibly frustrating to me. These are like back page news. The fact that Israel has peace treaties over the last 6 weeks with 3 Arab countries, and that's 2 more than they've had in all of their history. It's only Egypt and Jordan before that. So, I mean, I share that frustration. And also with the president's, as Anthony pointed out, the fact that he's kept us out of war.
Also, we have a caller as well, emailer, wanting to know what exactly the president did for the black community.
Well, I'll just say one thing. Historical black colleges and universities, for instance. That's one thing Obama could have did in terms of funding that he didn't do. You know, every year, I don't know if most people out there, most callers don't know this, but every year, the historical black colleges and universities had to go to the president for funding. Well, the president did the one thing that most presidents never had done. They gave them more money than what they've requested, 1. 2, he gave that for a period of 10 years. So the colleges and universities don't have to come back to the president every year to request money for funding for their colleges. And so that's one thing. 2, the president and the attorney general has clearly stated that the one thing that most blacks need to focus on nowadays is education. Education is the civil rights issue of our time. A.G. Barr said this. He said that the one system that he says that racial injustice still it is in this country is in our education system. More blacks are being kept out, shut out in our education systems. If we can get that under control, then we can move this country ahead, and then and only then will we move ahead as a country.
Okay, we've got to pause. 1-800-723-8029. One more segment coming up tonight on Beyond the Beltway. And when we come back, we're going to ask each of our guests to look into the crystal ball and make a prediction for Election Day. Back shortly. Bruce DuMont back. Thanks very much for joining us. This is our last segment this evening, and I'm going to spend some time now talking about politics. I'm going to start with you, Josh. You said you have been traveling around the countries and country with your son. In many cases, you've shown some great vacation spots to your Facebook friends. Look into your crystal ball. Again, we're going to keep a record of this, so don't just puff it because you're a Republican, but. What do you think the final result will be? Who will be the new president, or will there be a new president? And what will happen in the U.S. Senate?
Well, I'm very bad at predictions, but I would say this, Bruce, that if the results were counted and tallied today, I think that, unfortunately, from my view, that Biden would win. But we have 9 days to go, and I'm hopeful that that the president can continue to narrow the gap as we're seeing in a number of the state polls that are important. As far as the Senate goes, I see the Democrats taking the Senate.
Okay, and Ray Lopez, go ahead.
You know, I've seen now 2 elections in my lifetime where popular vote didn't guarantee the winner. So I think that while all polls seem to be leading and trending towards Biden, I think that there's still a real chance that Trump may pull this off just because of the electoral college advantage that he has in a number of these states where Team Biden and, quite frankly, the Democratic Party has never tried to run successful field operations to win these states over because they're too small or too insignificant in terms of the grand number of things. What I do find interesting as someone who's been elected using early votes and mail-in ballots plenty of times is that, we're almost at 60 million people who have voted early at this point. And that's basically all of everybody who voted for Donald Trump, to put it in perspective for my fellow panelists here, last election alone. So the fact that we have this many people who've already voted makes me wonder what the election day surprise is going to be, if there is any. Because right now we're seeing that for states that track the party affiliation for general elections, right now Democrats are beating Republicans 2-1 when it comes to early voting. But again, those aren't necessarily states that matter for the Electoral College consideration or in those areas. So I think, while everyone's assuming it's going to go one way, I think we may still there's still a real possibility that Trump may be able, by probably the most contentious election and court challenge in history, to pull it off, simply because the Electoral College will bend in his favor.
Anthony Anderson, you have already voted.
Yes.
I've already voted, so go ahead.
Yes, as always, I do believe the President of the United States, President Donald Trump, will continue to preserve, protect, and defend the Constitution of the United States of America against all enemies, foreign and domestic, and he will do that with the help of the black community. Black men will show up and show out for this president. Trust me on this. And black progressives are not going to show up for Biden or Harris. It's not going to happen. The election is over.
U.S. Senate. Who controls the Senate?
U.S. Senate, Republicans, slim majority. Slim majority.
By the way, if you are correct, the biggest story could be if Donald Trump wins, and as you say, the black turnout is significantly higher than projected. This could be the first time in U.S. history that I think that a winning Republican candidate would be able to thank the black community for putting him over the top.
Absolutely, but the thing is this, Bruce, Donald Trump has done everything in America to earn the black vote. He's not just talking about it. He's went out there and actively tried to earn the black vote. Never before have I seen so much in social media, so much on network television, so much on regular television, how there has been an outpouring of support by black people for a Republican president. It has not happened in the 30 years that I've been a Republican. So that's why I say what I say. I have never seen this much support for a Republican president like Donald Trump, period.
Okay.
Anthony, could I ask you how much the crime bill reforms play into that?
Coming from, I have a background in corrections, and I've seen what, the crime has done to the black community. I've seen what it's done. It has absolutely eviscerated the black family. And so when it comes to the black community and Trump trying to do some reforms within the criminal justice system, the First Step Act was just that. It was the first step in the right direction, and it could have been done. No, it could have been done under Barack Obama, but it wasn't. The first black president didn't do it. It took a white Republican president to get the ball moving for reform in the criminal justice system, and Donald Trump should be applauded for that. He should be seen as a person who unites families rather than divide. Should
Joe Biden, however, be criticized for passing that bill? Because at the time, Republicans, Democrats, liberals, conservatives, the Black Caucus, everybody was for it. They wanted everybody to get tough on crime. And now he's backing away from it. But really, should he be backing away from it?
Well, I don't know if he should be backing away from it per se, but at the time, most black people said we have to do something about this crime in our community.
Yes, absolutely.
And all the black politicians were culpable in regard to that 1994 crime bill. Yeah. But the fact of the matter is, Joe Biden was knee deep with a lot of racist Democrats, and that's what rubs black Democrats the wrong way in terms of their support for Biden and Harris. And Kamala Harris's record on as an attorney general out in California doesn't help the matter.
Okay. By the way, I want to agree a little bit with what Ray had to say. I'm not going to make my prediction tonight, but I do believe that when you talk about a 10% lead in the national polls, A lot of those votes are coming from California and New York and Illinois, and not necessarily from states that are going to count on election night. So I expect a much closer race within the states that count, meaning the Electoral College states. And again, I'm not going to make my prediction tonight. I did 4 years ago, by the way, for our new listeners. I did predict that Donald Trump was going to be elected President of the United States. Tune in next week, and I will let you know whether I think he will be reelected President of the United States. Our thanks to our guests this evening. We appreciate very much all joining us. And again, our thanks to Randall Bochner and Colin McKnight for their assistance in the production of this program. I'm Bruce DuMont. Good night from Evanston, Illinois.